Focus today on the sport parachute, the common type that people are out there flying. All USPA members are probably familiar with the sport parachute. You wrote an article, I want to say it was exactly about a year ago, called Your Pack is Wack. And you talked about some common things that people do that might not necessarily be good for the pack job. And so I just kind of wanted to walk through basically what you wrote in that article and give our members an idea of the way you pack a parachute and what you recommend.
Got it.
Okay. So in your article, you mention about the pre-packing preparation. So what do you recommend doing prior to beginning your pack job?
Well, there's a short list of things that I think everyone should do before they pack or before they give the parachute to the rigger, the packer. Set your pilot chute, check your rubber bands, untwist all your lines, reset your slider. That's very important. Do your brakes, do your own brakes, because nobody does them like you do. And run your 4 lines up. And while you're at it, you might just check that the other things are in position, closing loop. And then just before you pack, set your pilot chute, and that gets you ready. A lot of people set it later, but it's better to set it at the beginning. And I'll show you why as I go through this.
Okay.
Okay. Well, before we get going, I mean, it's always good to just take a look at things. This is what the parachute looks like when it's open. And all you're going to do is put it together backwards of the way you want to open it. So the first thing you want to have happen is as the parachute starts to develop is the slider does this. That's probably the most important part of opening the parachute, is getting the slider to do this as soon as the parachute comes out of the bag. So that's what we're going to work toward. Everything else packs around it. We all know, we might remember, getting wrapped up in my word. We have the A, the B, the C, the D, and the brake lines, okay? And all the C, D, and brake lines go through this slider grommet on this side. And the A and the B lines go through this slider grommet on this side. We have the left, the right, the front, and the back. So I like to use the slider to keep me oriented at all times on the parachute. Then we have, wherever the lines attach to a parachute, going to get technical on you, that's called a loaded rib. So what we're going to do is take all these loaded ribs and put them to the outside so the air takes them that away, and all the lines are going to wind up in the middle. So that's the whole point of it. And we're going to do what's called the Pro Pack, which they say is, what is going on here? God, Spider-Man. They say stands for proper ram orientation, but I just think it's because you have to pay to get it packed that way. So we're going to pull this down now. Ignore that man behind the curtain. And then we're going to just take the whole parachute and pull it together like this. And we're just going to get it to compress this way with the slider up and all of the loaded ribs to the outside, the loaded seams to the outside. Okay, so prep the parachute to pack. Set it down on a nice clean surface. Get this guy out of the way. And anchor it. A lot of people use weights, and that's good. And when you get really good at packing, you find you can do with less and less anchoring. But when you're just starting, or when you're just changing your pack job or reviewing something, find a really good way to keep your parachute where you want it. I need a link. This is what I was doing when we ran into the tech problems. But that's okay, because we got all kinds of goodies here in the rigging log. So we'll pull that back to about there. All right. Now we've got a good solid anchor. And we'll start at the top. So we're going to go all the way to the top. And set our pilot chute. And when we do this, we're actually going to do a little inspection. So if you can do a correct, proper inspection on your parachute each time you pack it and add only about 30 seconds to your pack job. So we'll set the pilot chute and we'll make sure it really sets. And there's some lines inside there. There's some wide lines and some skinny lines. And I'm not going to get too technical, but when you let off the tension, the skinny line should go slack and not so much the wide line. So that's called the limiter tape. The limiter tape should stay pretty much tense. And on this type of pilot chute collapser, it's got this sort of snaky looking thing. Sometimes it's a good idea to do a double set. Just work that down like that. And you'll see this on a couple of different kinds of containers, and then set it again. And that'll help save your kill line. And that'll also make sure that you're getting the full inflation on your pilot chute. So if your limiter tapes go slack first, then that means your pilot chute may not be getting full inflation. And you can't see it in there very well, but that kill line is turning into a little S when I let go, while the limiter tapes are staying loose. So that's an important test that you should do pretty much every time you pack the rig. You can also, if you can feel the kill line in this hand, it's probably a little bit too short. Talk to your rigger, get that sorted out. Okay? And then everybody wants to go set their brakes, but we really need to untwist the toggle lines, the brake lines first. All right, so undo your slider. And if your slider has this kind of material on this channel, you always want to turn that away from that soft material and into the slider channel, and then gently pull that way. Otherwise, if it has this softer 0P material, you'll start to get a little hole right here. And it's not really serious, but it's kind of tricky to fix. And you know, you don't want to put any more money in your parachute than you have to. You want to put that into jump tickets. Okay. Look at the slider. Any damage to the slider is a no-go. And then we'll grab our brake lines, bring them down. And we'll make sure that all the twists are out of the brake lines. Now, do you have to do this every jump? No, but you should do it every 2 or 3 jumps. Because if you get a lot of twists in the brake lines, like right there, that's going to add wear as the slider goes up and down that, and that'll shorten the brake line a little bit faster. Some of it will actually do permanent damage to it that way. And twists make loops, and loops make knots, and knots make riggers money. So we don't want to be cutting away parachutes, leaving everything up in a tree. Different people have different ways of doing this. I set the brakes to the outside so that I've got everything down on the outside of the risers, and that'll put that in the bottom of my riser channel down here. that gets the extra brake line down in the bottom of the riser channel. So it
Can
doesn't.
you zoom on that one more time just because I think that's a common question that people have of which side to route the brake excess on the brake lines?
There's a bunch of little details, and absolutely, there's a bunch of little details that add up to make a better pack job. If I have that like that, when I put that down into there, that puts my brake line down inside that slider channel, as opposed to if I have it on the outside, I mean the inside, like this, then as that goes down, oops, that's going to be up on top. And
I see.
if the riser covers are doing their job, that shouldn't be a problem. But some rigs don't have a secondary riser cover here. They just have a single riser cover. So especially on them, I want to get those lines stuffed down inside. And we're not going to close the rig tonight, so we're not going to be able to demonstrate this later. But that's why I put them on the outside. If you have any questions
That
about
makes
that,
sense.
if you have any question about that, you should check your owner's manual. Sometimes they don't write all the words in there. I mean, these guys make parachutes. They don't write parachute articles, all right? Or manuals. They might take a picture, and a picture is worth 1,000 words. And so it takes a long time to write 1,000 words, and time is money, and these guys are manufacturers. And as expensive as this stuff is, it's still not enough to make anybody very rich. All right, and then I've usually got some choices about where to put my brake line. If you release your brakes really gently, then everything's going to feed out of here and go at the top. Maybe, I just say maybe, you should come in from the top. Everything feeds out as the brakes release. If you're the kind of person, and there's nothing wrong with this, I mean, I wouldn't let my daughter date a guy like this, but if you're the kind of person who just yanks your brake lines down and pulls really hard, you don't want to go in from the top because you're going to make a mess right here while that's burning down there. But if you're that kind of person and you pull from this side, then you won't hurt a thing. So your choice. And you can also do what I sometimes do, which is come in the middle and split the difference. And this rig just has a couple of loops. I have to admit, I kind of prefer the ones that give you a little bit more hang down on the, give you a little bit more pressure on the brake line to keep it in place, maybe some elastic in there, something like that. It wears out, but it can be repaired. And, I don't want my brake lines flying around when I go to reach my brake and I have to do this and I grab my toggle and it comes out and makes a knot and I'm all messed up and I've got a glove and I'm at 1,800 feet and I got a guy in front of me. I want everything just kind of come off real smooth and easy. And then while you're doing that, check and make sure that you've got some catch on these toggle keepers. If all you have to do is shake this and that comes out of there, then you can just go to your rigger and get another row of stitching around here to tighten that up. And I don't know if a lot of people know this, but the biggest cause of cutaways is brake fires. There are more people cutting away because of brake fires than anything else. Now, you're not necessarily supposed to cut away a brake fire, but when the canopy starts spinning and you've just finished a really crazy skydive, you're not thinking so much and you just might cut it away. But really, if you can keep your brakes from deploying accidentally, you can be way ahead of the game. Okay. All right. So we've straightened out the toggles and we'll go back up here. Not a bad idea to just check your rubber bands before you get started. And if we have a second, we'll talk about rubber bands a little bit because it's gotten to be a pretty important issue. So I'm going to look for the ones that are broken, especially right here, because I don't want to be holding the parachute in the bag and have to stow the lines. And all of a sudden I realize I don't even have a rubber band to sew them with. Okay. So I could have checked that earlier. Okay. Let's pack this parachute.
Real quick, a couple questions before you move on. What will twisted brake lines do to the performance of your canopy? So if you're never untwisting those brake lines, how much is it going to affect the way your canopy flies?
I've done some measurements on that. And most of the time when we see twisted brake lines, we see 8, 9 twists, you know, and that is pretty severe. 360-degree twist, it's really 18 half twists. I mean, somebody's not paying attention. And that'll shorten the line not that much. All right. So it's more about the brake line getting a loop and inviting a knot and also wearing. Now, with microline brake lines, if they are twisted up like that, they'll also start shrinking over a period of time. And then your brakes aren't fully deployed. And so you're landing with less speed than your parachute should have when you try to land. So, I mean, I don't know all these answers, but I know that if you untwist your brake lines, it works out pretty well. So if they're real twisted up, there's all kinds of crazy consequences of that. But if you do keep them straight, then there are a whole lot fewer consequences. So every 2 or 3 jumps, at least at the end of the day, straighten those things out.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt to just go through and do it. And we did have someone ask in the chat about the slider damage. He said, if there is damage to the slider pockets, is that a no-go?
No, not necessarily, because it needs to be fixed, but it can probably wait till the end of the weekend. All of the stuff that has to keep the slider collapsed is intact at that point. It's just that channel and your kill line, your slider kill line, collapsing line. If it's really severe, it'll start trying to work its way out of the channel. But even that, if the slider's set and everything, it shouldn't really be that big of an issue. But if you've got a gash in it this long, well, that's a no-go, all right? If it's just a little place that needs to be fixed, it can wait till the end of the weekend. You can give it to your rigger.
Okay, awesome. I think that's all we have for now. You can keep on going.
Okay, good. So as you can see, I've got a good anchor back there. I can really lean into this pack down, no problem. I'll exaggerate that a little bit. And then, as we were showing when the parachute was hanging up, this thing really wants to pack itself. Now, I didn't pick some wimpy little 135-foot parachute or something like that to make it easy on myself. And I have no idea how this goes in the bag. I haven't packed this mini parachute before. I just grabbed it off the shelf. Thanks to Chris Coleman for lending me your parachute, if you know it. Okay. I also want to give a shout out to Mr. Bobby P. This camera is not moving itself. Bobby Page is one of the most famous videographers, and Skydive Orange is so happy to have him all the time. And he's here tonight working his little tail off trying to keep up with us. So shout out to Bobby.
Thanks, P. Bobby, behind the camera.
Thank you all.
Okay, so I've got it over both shoulders right now. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of get all those loaded seams between the B lines and the C lines, because it's A, B, C, D brake. So the loaded seams between the A and the B lines, I'm going to give them one of these. And you see that pretty much puts them to the outside. There they are. There's all my loaded seams. And if you can see down in there or not, out to the outside. So I can go there and here. And I can even get in behind the slider and just whoosh. Now I've got my parachute perfectly packed between the B and the C lines before I even got out of there. And you notice I keep my slider in place. I know some people like to do this to see down inside. Up to you, but for my money, I like to have the slider in place all the time because it keeps me oriented on the parachute. All right, and then I'm going to bounce back here. And Bobby, if you'll come around this side, I'm going to bounce back here. And here is my nose and my A and my B lines. Now, on a little parachute, I don't even mess with this. And you know that thing that people do and they can't, 1, 2, 3. Okay? But I don't know how I can make that nose any more perfect than it is right now. If I've got a really big parachute, I might count out the 9 lines, like we're doing some military guys. I'll count out those 9 pieces of nose like you've been taught. But really, I don't worry about it. And you're not going to have too many malfunctions between the A and the B lines. But here are my A lines. They're the shortest ones because the parachute goes downhill all the time. So there are my A lines up front. And I've just pulled those loaded seams out to the side like that. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. And it will reduce the bulk in your pack job if you need. So once again, I can use my slider to keep me located. I'll pull those loaded seams out to the outside, leave that center cell right in the middle. And now I've got this right here. So that all happened without me doing anything. So I'm going to do that all in one move. All right. I'm going to go. And then back to perfect slider. Remember? Boom, as it comes out of the thing. And we're going to hit it one more time. And some people call that the $1 million slider. We call it perfect slider. And
You
some people,
definitely flaked your parachute way faster than I ever do.
well,
I'm gonna have to try that. That was that'll take off 2 minutes from my pack job easy.
good. That's great. And if you do 1,000 jumps, I just saved you 2,000 minutes. You do the
Thanks,
math.
Kevin.
Okay, so now I got my brake lines are the highest lines in the back because we set the brakes and locked them in. So we've just basically got the brakes down like that. So instead of lying on the floor, they've pulled way up like this. So when I go to the back, that's the brakes. And almost all the parachutes we use these days have 4 brake lines. I'm going to get them out of the way. And as I did that, I just sort of what they call flake the tail, right? Just threw that over there, put it in the crook of my arm, just forget about it. And that's going to bring up my D lines. Most intermediate parachutes have the same number of D lines as one for each cell. Okay, so 5 D lines for 9 cell, 5 D lines on the left and the right. 5 plus 5 equals 9, right? Okay, and so we'll come in here, we'll pick up our 5 D lines. And there they are, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And because this parachute has a tapered wing, none of this stuff's going to be even. We're going to have short ones and long ones, and that's all right. But remember, I already packed the A's and the B's and the B's and the C's. So these are my B lines. All I'm going to do is take them, put them on my belly button, hold them tight, pull this back so all of these loaded seams are on top, and just let that drop down in there. And now this stabilizer falls into place. I'll clean it up. I'm going to follow it from here. I love my friend Greg Rao from UPT. He says, the train comes out of the station and goes down the track, and it comes up to this station and goes over this track and this one until it comes all the way up to the terminal. And I think that works really, really well. So I even teach that to my older students. All right, then we'll come over to the other side. There are my 4 brake lines over my wrist. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My D lines are the longest. There are my C's. Pull this back, get my loaded seams, drop that down in there, clear my stabilizer on the right side, and then $1 million slider. Right, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to spend just an extra second here getting that slider looking just the way I want it. All right, now the whole proper ram air orientation thing, this is where it goes kind of out the window. So the part that's on the farthest away from me is that section of tail that has no brake lines attached to it. So it's drooping way down to the floor. So if I want to find my center cell in the back, all I have to do is kick. And that's where it's going to be. I can just kick out, and there it's going to be, right there. And bada bing, bada boom. There's your label. And I don't want to disturb any of my pack job. And in a perfect world, we would stop right here and put it in the bag. But you know that's not going to happen. So what we're going to do is put the back of the parachute around the front of the parachute. Okay, that makes no sense at all, but that's what we're going to do because we have to control the bundle when we're putting it in the bag. So I'm going to turn this parachute 90 degrees. Not going to disturb anything. There's my right side of my parachute, my left side of my parachute. I'm going to pull this down right in front of that. And I'm not going to go too far here. This is where people make their first mistake. They roll this too far. Just start rolling and rolling and rolling. And oh yeah, I'm a good parachute packer. I'm rolling my parachute. And all you're doing when you do that is you're sucking your D lines back around in front of your C lines and your C lines in front of your B lines. And that's not no bueno. So we're not going to do that. What we're going to do, make sure everything's back in place. We're going to fold this baby over 2, maybe 3 times on a bigger parachute. Big wide folds, because wrapping this thing up like a cigarette, okay, is not going to improve your openings. It's not going to slow down your openings. In fact, it's going to make your openings faster. And I didn't make that up. Okay, that's coming from some pretty good engineers. Okay? But I'm going to hold this really tight. And here's the key. Mistake number 2. Take this thing and go, oh my gosh. I just spent 10 minutes doing a pack job and I just blew it up. Okay. Mistake number 3. Let it go. And now set the bag. Okay. We set the bag already. So we don't have to do this right now while this thing is going. Right. And then, okay, to add insult to injury, we're going to do this.
That really looks like the way I pack.
Okay? So, like, what's the point, right? All right, let's look at maybe an alternate way of doing it. Oh my God, look at this. I got lines in front of my nose. And seriously, if you don't care, if you pack that way, you can expect a malfunction about every 250 to 300 jumps. That's been and I'm a rigger. I don't really mind, but up to you. Okay.
So Kevin, while you're redoing your flaking, someone had asked how much the flaking could affect, like if it could actually cause a malfunction if you flake incorrectly, or are you just flaking to reduce the volume of the pack job?
I would say B mostly. If you've got the slider set and you've got the center, most of that stuff's going to blow to the outside. So, we have this concept called trash packing. Somebody asked me, what kind of a packer are you? And I said, I'm a very neat trash pack. So the only thing I really care about is where I start off with these lines and keeping everything in place. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you what I've kind of come up with to keep from destroying my beautiful product. So we'll take this around like before. We'll make 2 folds. Works out. Pull them nice and tight, and I'm going to hold them here and here, and come around to this other side. You'll notice I've got a hold of that tail roll right there, the tail fold, and I'm going to set that down really easy, and I'm going to hold on to it. So I'm not going to let that go. Then I'll clamp what I've got here, because this is the business section right here. This is where everything's going to happen. Keep that in. And I'm going to follow right up with my forearm on the center cell and clamp that down right top of that tail fold. Okay. So I've got my tail fold under control right now. Now is when I'm going to just spend a couple minutes just letting some air breathe out of the parachute. The parachute is not going to be all that easy, I can tell you now. It's dry and it's cold and it's not very old. But this part up here is just the fluffy stuff. And now watch this. This is kind of cool. I know, I don't want any letters about this, all right? But this, and lay that on top of the tail fold. And I just took whatever D lines went out to the side and put them back on top where they belong. And I'm going to hold that there. And we're going to fold that back this way. Like I said, really radical, right? But I think what we've just done is we've gotten back a little bit more toward the whole proper ram air orientation thing. Because I'm not taking anything from the front, from the back of the parachute around the front. I've got the back and the back and the front right now. And then there's a couple of different schools of thought on this, but the most popular canopy manufacturer puts it out that you want to do this part first. Don't wear yourself out trying to make that happen. If it's not working for your hands, that's okay. But that's the whole point is no matter what you do to shape it to put in the bag, you want to keep this part, the business end, you want to keep that intact throughout the whole pack job. So there's my nice tail fold right there. There's my double roll right there. Just squeezing air out, going slow, squeezing air out. I'm not a fast packer. You can ask all the people I packed with, they hate me. Okay, and here's kind of a money move. Put your hand on the slider and just hold that there. Keep that in place. And now we've got a little bundle that's about the shape of the bag. There's some stuff going on here that's going to take you some time, knowing exactly what pressure to put on and where to put it. And I get that. So it'll come with practice. Don't get too greedy here. You can use your knee to just sort of hold that in position. Try to get it all at once. It kind of jacks it up a little bit. There you go. So, and then just take that and continue to squeeze air out as you go. All right, and that puts us into a nice familiar place. And then continue to squeeze air out. I'm just a little guy, so I use my weight rather than my strength. And then I do what's called kiss the grommet. I like to kiss the grommet, squeeze enough out of here, just get the grommet to kiss the base of the rubber band, and then stow your line. And that saves you from overstressing your rubber bands. And then from here, it's pretty much the same stuff. How do you know how long to make these? Check your owner's manual. It will tell you. And one time I said that to somebody, they said, "What? Oh, wait, what? Owner's manual? That's a thing?" Oh my God. Always double wrap. We're doing a lot of research. We being, I guess, the industry folks, Parachute Industry Association, Rigging Committee, Technical Committee and stuff. We're in the middle of a lot of research right now, trying to sort out a couple things to do with line stow bands. There's some new rubber bands that are out. We've got an article, I think, out about that. Parachute Industry Association has put out some information on it. We've got some problems. We may be on the track to solving them right now, or at least coming up with a resolution. But in the meantime, we're just trying to do some research. I would say, pretty safe to say that at this point, everybody's settled on stowing at least 2 times around. And if you've got really little tiny lines and you're way down to where you're past the cascades and you've only got 8 lines to stow or something like that in the brake lines, maybe even a triple wrap. I don't have a lot of research on that, and I don't like to put a lot of stuff out there that's not been researched by the canopy manufacturers and folks like that. And I tend to stay away from the campfire talk. But I do know this. These rubber bands that we're using now, they don't last as long as the older ones. And we've seen some problems with the rubber bands that have been stored in less than ideal conditions, a lot of heat, a lot of air, really heavy electric fields, probably not as much that, but some of that. The rules say you have to pack your main every 180 days before the jump. A lot of people don't even realize that. I would not go 180 days on a main these days with these rubber bands. And I can't tell you how long to go or not to go. But for me, if it's been packed up all winter like ours are right now, I'm going to do a repack and probably change my rubber bands. And Parachute Industry Association is recommending riggers to change all the rubber bands on pilot emergency rigs whenever they repack them at 180 days. Okay.
Before you go any further, Kevin, we just have a few questions about the line stows. Someone added comments on slack between the stows. So I think he just wants your general commentary about slack to
I would
leave.
say, yeah, I would say refer to your manufacturer's manual. I usually like to see everything nice and neat. So there's a couple things going on here. Some manufacturers put their line stows way out here. Some of them put them more in the center. This manufacturer here has got them sort of halfway in between. It's likely correct, the concept that as these line stows are coming off, if you're not way out on the end, you're not rocking the bag so much. It's a little harder to rock the bag from here than it is from out here. So you don't want to get a lot of this as the bag's coming off. So line stows a little bit toward the center are good. We know that double wrapping them, what happens when you double wrap is it causes them to cinch. And that's a good thing because it makes the release tension consistent across the board as you're coming off of there. But my real answer to your question is I've never had that question before. I just try to stow them really neatly. And, I don't want to have a lot of this going on, I guess. But if the bag is stretched that far, I guess that's where I want the lines. I don't know. That's a good one. Stump the chump. Good. Nice.
I think referring to the owner's manual is a good answer to that. And I also think, like you said, where the stows, like the rubber band stows, are located is pretty much a good indication of where they want that stow to end up. So based on the D-bag and where the attachment points for the rubber bands are, it's kind of where you want those stows to be, more or less. And then someone asked, what are your thoughts on full stowless magnetic D-bags? Good, bad? Have you heard of any problems with them?
Mega what?
Full stowless magnetic.
Okay, so these are my thoughts. All right, I'll get on the soapbox here a little bit. If I were a wingsuit guy, opener at 45 and 50 miles an hour, I think I would go with a semi-stowless bag and just make sure my locking stows stayed in place with a minimum amount of tension. When I'm competing, which I don't do anymore, I don't like to sound like I know what I'm doing, and I never finish them higher than the bottom of the top third or top of the bottom third anyway. But for competition, canopy pilots really jumping some serious stuff. There's probably a place for semi-stowless. Crew guys, I don't know. I've done a bunch of crew, but it's been a long time. I don't know if they're going with semi-stowless. But for average Joe Schmo jumping, 135s to, 2 whatevers, probably not the best idea. The tension, that little bit of tension on the rubber bands as the bag is coming off plays a lot into your opening. And it also, what happens in the last few stows plays a lot into what happens when the slider comes out. Or as one very famous parachute manufacturer told me, in technical terms, when the slider comes out after only the last 2 stows are holding the bag closed, it does all kinds of crazy shizzle. And so we don't want that with the slider. Remember, we want the slider to go poof, like so. So my personal recommendation is, if you have a very specific reason to use semi-stowless, I go for it. And other than that, I also talked to one of the manufacturer reps and said, are you seeing, just between you and me, so I'm telling you, right? So just between, are you seeing an increase in malfunctions, line malfunctions from semi-stowless? And he's, and so that's the way I kind of feel about it too. I train riggers a lot, and we very, very specific about how we stow lines because reserve parachutes are in semi-stowless bags essentially. We're really careful how we stow the lines. Then we have Joe AB license guy. That guy's got a really cute girlfriend. I'm going to say get a semi-stowless bag too. And then lines are all over the place, you know, and so it can't be good. So if you have a really specific reason for semi-stowless, then, you know, talk to your coach in that discipline and see if it's a good idea. But otherwise, I would probably stick with good old rubber bands.
Okay, awesome. And then one more question before you keep
Oh,
going. I'm going to reverse a little bit to when you rolled the tail. You mentioned that you see a lot of people over rolling the tail or putting lots and lots of rolls. And you hear comments like, you know, I'm doing such and such to open slower or faster or whatever. What is your personal opinion on tail rolling and how it affects the opening of your parachute?
well, it's not my personal opinion. It's actually kind of my learned opinion. When you roll the tail, you're causing things to go into the parachute in places where they're not supposed to go to until the tail unrolls. So then when it finally does, it flies open, and this is where you get harder openings. So we're not really concerned about a hard opening. We're worried about spikes in the opening. So you can have a reserve that opens in 2 seconds at terminal or 3 seconds at terminal. I'm just making a number there. Or you can have a main that opens in 7 seconds, but during that 7 seconds, it'll have a harder on your neck than the reserve did opening at 2 or 3 seconds. So what you're looking for is a smooth deployment and a smooth inflation. So the way that we're doing this, I don't like to think of the parachute opening. I like to think of it as unfolding. And so we just fold over the tail twice just to keep everything in place while we're creating the bundle to go in the bag. But we're really not trying to effectuate anything, a good SAT word, by rolling the tail. That's just the only place we've got to put it. On a reserve, we leave the tail totally exposed. The tail on a reserve looks like this up on top. That's it. There's a little bit that tucks in on the outside just to help control the bundle, but it doesn't go in front of the nose. It goes behind, like the A and B folds or behind the B and C folds. So the opening characteristics of the main are on the drawing board. They're not in the packet. They're on the drawing board. What you want to do is give the main a chance to have the slider open up before anything else happens while the air is going into the nose and brings the parachute out.
Hence the $1 million slider comment. Awesome. Okay, I think that's all the questions, so you can keep on going.
Wow, it's crazy. I'm going to back up one line stow. We're going to forget this one for a second. You might have 2 stows, you might have 3 stows, you might have 4 stows. But for my pack job, wherever I finish closing the bag, I'm going to come back here and reset the pilot chute. This is really important. So I'm going to reset the pilot chute because some of that crept while I was doing all that stuff. So I preset it, it crept a little bit. Now I've reset it and I'm going to double check it, and it's still doing its thing like it's supposed to. And what I'm not going to do is this. That doesn't tell you anything, okay? Collapse a pilot chute and do that, and it'll still do that. So people who are testing their pilot chutes like that they just haven't really thought it out. If you really want to test it, make sure it does that. Make sure you get a good pop out of it. And that way you know your pilot chute's inflated. Okay. And then just continue stowing your lines the way you like to stow them. All of my jeans have holes in the right knee. So I borrowed some tips from my friend John Stotts. And he's a really, really great packer here at Skydive Orange. This is a guy that runs the packing floor and goes through literally years without a tandem malfunction from the drop zone. I really gotta give him some shout out there. All right, and then we're gonna take what's left over here and do something very specific with it, and then we're pretty much gonna be, I think, wrapping it up. Take it off my cool little triangle thing. Turn that over. Okay. And I guess we just did an article on this a couple weeks ago or a couple months ago, George.
Yeah, I want to say it was the January issue that covered this topic.
Okay. So our good friend Pickles from Sunpath helped us out with that one. And we're just going to get the risers in position. And all of this stuff is according to the manufacturer's manual, right? What you're going to do here with the riser covers and all that stuff. Usually spread those out a little bit to spread the love, spread the wealth, not make a lot of bulk. I put everything together up top at this point. I'm trying to get to a certain place. I'm not really doing anything very specific here. But my buddy Chris is going to be jumping this, so I better do it carefully. Okay. And then, so we're going to come over here and look at what's happening at this position, all right? So what I want to have happen now is I've left enough line loose that I can get this to come all the way down in the corners. And I'll have to put my little tool in here, a pull-up cord or whatever you're going to use. And I want, as I put the bag in there, I want those lines to stay all the way to the corners and then to the middle. I really like the rigs that have a little band right here in the middle so that I have even tension on both sides as that lifts out of there. And you can have, if you ever want to, you can ask your master rigger, you gotta be a master rigger because they're doing our operation, to put a center stow on there for you. I think it's a good idea. And then we'll put that in there like that. And I don't know where you want to go from here, George, but
yeah, I guess I will just touch points with the people who maybe didn't catch the article that you're referencing, but it was, you know, how much to leave unstowed from the risers to the bag.
right. And so the answer is according to the manufacturer's manual. And but what we're trying to get happen there is that the lines go to the corner and then across, not just straight down to the you know, the nearest line stow on one side. Because if you catch lines under here as this bag is coming out of here, and you're not quite stable, maybe you're a little bit left shoulder low, or you're sitting a little head high, and you catch that, you're going to spin your bag as it comes off at best. And we've even seen rigs where they peeled the reserve container right off of the back pad, and that's extreme, but we've seen it happen for sure. So you want to try to keep that away from there as much as possible. Some of the rigs have a little triangle right here. It's like my fingers, and it keeps the lines from getting under there. They have a little web right here where my fingers are to help keep that from happening. And that's not a bad idea. And then what you're doing with your bridle, don't listen to anybody. Okay, people say, oh, you want your smiley face. You want to come out the bottom and then go on the top, and then manufacturer's manual. Very important. Some of the manufacturers either recommend or require a certain routing. And if they don't recommend a different routing, it may be because they've had pilots shoot in tow doing it the wrong way. So make sure you know what's going on there. So we're just going to close this up.
And I will give a shout out, I guess, to anyone who doesn't know how to find their manufacturer manual. Maybe you bought your gear secondhand, and obviously the person who sent it to you didn't hand over a manual with your new gear. You can always go online to any container manufacturer, and they should have their manual listed on their website in a form that you can look at it either from your phone or from your computer, or even download to PDF and print it out if you want to. So if you don't know what's in the manual or where the manual is, just go online and you will find it.
Yeah. How you close your containers, super important, because unless you can get everything out to the end of the riser, anything that happens in between there, you can't cut a whack. So the whole point is to get everything off and the risers extended. And then what happens after that, at least we have emergency procedures for. But if you've got a pilot chute towing behind you, you got to make some choices. Well, you've already made the choices. You've got to execute some very difficult decisions. Well, do your pilot chute according to your manufacturer. There's a couple ways to test the different system. I've always used this one. I can't do every manufacturer's pilot chute according. I just can't. My memory. I'm like 70 years old. I can't remember everything. So I have a method that I've tried on lots and lots and lots of rigs, and it works for me. I'm not saying do this, but what I do like is I don't stack my bridle. I keep it kind of unstacked so that it fills out. I keep this wide because that's the shape of the container that it's going to go into. So I don't roll it up like a little burrito. You know what? We should go for Mexican after this now. Yeah.
Someone commented that their rigger suggested to make infinity loops with the excess line in the bottom of the tray. Just kind of going over what you just talked about, keeping the lines away from the center. So what are your thoughts about doing infinity loops with that excess line?
This sounds like a free fly maneuver. So I think what he's talking about is Infinity is one of the manufacturers, Velocity Sports Equipment. Kelly Farrington is just one of the most wonderful people in the industry. They do have that center stow, which is your last stow. Mirage also uses it. I think Evo uses it. There's a bunch of them that are going there. They have that center stow. As the last stow that comes out is in the middle, or the first stow that comes out is in the middle. So the risers come up evenly, and you can do that thing at the center. So I think that's what your questionnaire is referring to.
Okay, awesome. And then Derek, oh, nope, someone else, not Derek. Jared said, I saw your slow closing tool line extraction. Any comment to the individuals that rip those out fast?
Well, I mean, it's okay. We don't sell closing loops. We give them away. So when people wear them out, they can come up and get them. But I go nice and slow to keep the heat down. And that I presume that helps them last a little bit longer. Some people run it under the pin and all that stuff, and I think that's probably a good idea. I'm just trying to go easy on my loop.
Yes, exactly. All right. I think we answered most of the relevant questions in the chat. But if
we get some of the irrelevant.
Well, I was going to say, if there's a question that someone has specific, there was a couple personal questions about, why is my Saber 2 doing XYZ? Is it me? Is it the pack job? Would it be okay if I provide your email to people if they have questions, or how?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So everyone who's attended this meeting, you will get an email from me later on that will have the recorded version of the video on it. So you can always check back and look at different points and pause and rewind. And then I'll also provide you with Kevin's email address. So if you have any questions for him, and I think I'll also include the link to and thank you, Bobby Page. Here's the man behind the camera. Appreciate you very much. I will also include the link to the original article, Your Pack is Wack, and then the one we just mentioned that came out in January. That's basically the title, I think, is How Much to Leave Unstowed, how much line to leave unstowed. So, yeah. Any last talking points, Kevin, before we let you go?
No, I do want to just go back to the beginning and say, if you're using a packer, that's fine. Just prep your rig first before you hand it off to them. Do all that stuff from top to bottom and then hand it to them. And that way you're a lot more sure. Because somebody asked earlier, what about all that flaking stuff? Well, it isn't that important, really. But all the stuff that you do to prep the rig is much more important. So I think prep is everything. And, read your owner's manual, really. I read them often, and I'm always learning something that I missed the last time or that they put in there new or something like that. So that's it.
Okay, awesome. Well, we're getting a whole lot of thank yous. Everyone in the chat is saying thank you so much. Lots of smiley faces, lots of hearts. Everyone's very appreciative of you and Bobby for your time tonight. And that's it. We'll keep this at an hour exactly. Thank you so much, Kevin, and thank you, Bobby.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good New Year. Have a good season.
All right. See you later. Bye.